Stephen Chbosky is an American novelist, screenwriter, and film director. He is son of a tax preparer and a steel company executive. He was born on the 25th of January 1970 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where he lived during his childhood together with his parents and sister Stacy. In a 2007 interview, he stated that as a teenager, he enjoyed a good blend of the classics, horror, and fantasy, and that he was heavily influenced by J.D. Salinger's novel The Catcher in the Rye, as well as the writing of Scott Fitzgerald and Tennessee Williams, the influence of whom can be perceived in some aspects of Chbosky's style. He is best known for writing the screenplay for the Disney's 2017 live-action adaptation of Beauty and the Beast, as well as the novel The Perks of Being a Wallflower in 1999, that will be the subject of this analysis, after which he directed the film version of the same book in 2012. The Perks of Being a Wallflower is set in the United States of the early 90s, and its protagonist is Charlie, an extremely fragile 15-year-old whose mental health is put to the test by several traumatic events. At the beginning of the book, in fact, he mentions the suicide of his only friend, that Charlie deals with by writing letters to a stranger, to clear up his mind or just to talk to someone. Indeed, this is an epistolary novel, as it is made up entirely of the teenager's letters, in which he talks about past and present events, through flashbacks and flash-forwards. In spite of the apparent normality of his family, Charlie feels like they do not understand him, and he fails to connect with them, except for his Aunt Ellen. However, she had died prematurely way back when. The situation improves at school when he meets Sam, a girl he falls in love with, and Patrick, her brother, who introduce him to their circle of friends, thus making Charlie feel appreciated and normal. By passing through several troubles and psychological processes, the reader is provided with clues on the reasons that led to the protagonist's current state of mind that can be fully understood when he explodes as a present event reminds him of his Aunt Ellen, who turns out to have abused him during his childhood. Once the cause of the teenager's mental problems is unraveled, Charlie starts a process of rebirth, surrounded by the affection of his friends and family, who are finally aware of the story of which Charlie had never talked about. In spite of the fact that the film was directed by the author of the novel, some changes, even if not significant, were inevitably made in a film adaptation, due to the impossibility of dealing with themes of the book in an equally detailed manner. The first difference can be immediately seen in the narration, that is epistolary in the novel, whereas it is mainly external in the movie, except for some letters that Charlie reads as a narrator. Thus, the effect is different. In the book, the protagonist's past and psychological processes can be understood little by little thanks to what and how he writes, while in the movie, nothing is revealed directly, except for the end. Aunt Ellen's story itself is dealt with differently. In the novel, Charlie remembers the abuse during a physical contact with Sam, and the reader is directly made aware of his past, as well as his aunt's past, who in turn was a victim of violence on the part of her father. Thereby, this character is humanized, especially after Charlie's realization. In fact, after thinking about it, he understands why his aunt did what she did and why people are who they are. Hence, his forgiveness and the decision to start over. In a movie, none of this happens, until the very end, when the protagonist remembers the abuse during a mental breakdown. His aunt seemed to be a minor character, of whom no details were given. Charlie himself makes no comments after his realization, thus letting the spectators draw their own conclusions autonomously. Because of the context in which it takes place, the story is often thought to be just for teenagers. To my mind, though, it deals with deep themes that, despite being typical of adolescence in some cases, can be appreciated and arouse the interest of people of all ages. After all, the older you are, the less superficially you deal with these issues. The perhaps more evident theme is sexual abuse, worsened by the fact that in this case the perpetrator is one of the victim's family members. Hence, the protagonist's unstable mental health, that in turn opens the door to a wide range of secondary topics, from the inability to relate to others to the lack of self-love, summarized by Charlie's English teacher with the sentence, "We accept the love we think we deserve."
We accept the love we think we deserve.
Can we make them know that they deserve more?
We can try.
However, it should be noted that the food for thought offered by the book is much more compared to the movie, given that it explores the psychological processes of all characters, each of whom looks back on a troubled history. Charlie's sister, for instance, is a victim of domestic violence on the part of a boyfriend, or, to name another, Patrick, Sam's brother, is in love with a guy who cannot accept his homosexuality, thus preventing himself from being happy. From my point of view, although this novel does not bring about any substantial literary innovations, it can be considered of great importance at a time where the issues it deals with are typical of new generations, characterized by a sense of helplessness and incommunicability. The importance of this novel lies in the teachings and conclusions drawn while reading. We understand how harmful it is not to face our problems, to withdraw into ourselves for fear of not being understood. We understand that there is nothing wrong with admitting that we are not okay and asking for help. We understand that thinking that bad things happen to us just because we do not deserve anything better is completely wrong, and that we will just need to talk to someone who loves us to realize that we are often our own worst critics. I believe that the troubled journey the author guides us on, although it often goes through heavy themes, has the only purpose of spreading a positive message. We cannot control what happens to us, but we can decide where we go from there and how to face it in order to turn pain into the starting point for happiness. It was pretty natural for me to choose this novel for this analysis. I saw the movie even before reading the book, at a time when I needed motivation, and I was impressed to such an extent that I decided to read the novel, in spite of not being an avid reader back then. Maybe because of my personal involvement due to the period when I read it, or maybe because of my being extremely emotional, it was and it is still the book that impressed me the most. I find that the literary work has a number of added values compared to the movie. First of all, the epistolary style used in the novel makes the readers feel like Charlie was writing directly to them, thus making it almost inevitable for them to feel emotionally involved. Secondly, the author carries out deep psychological analysis of the characters that make perfectly understandable everything they do. In the film version, due to an obvious lack of time, these insights cannot be carried out. In this way, in my view, the suspense is undoubtedly enhanced, at the expense of the emotional impact, that in this particular case can be considered one of the key aspects of the story, because of the themes it deals with. By revealing the story of every character, in fact, the novel makes us understand that we cannot judge people for what they do without being aware of their past first. While reading on Talon's backstory, for instance, the readers wonder what is right or wrong, justifiable or condemnable, and they come to the conclusion that it is wrong to react to violence by becoming perpetrator of violence and by dumping problems onto others. Even though people's past marks their life in some way, they should not let it be a condemnation, neither for themselves nor for others.
And in this moment, I swear, we are infinite.